opinions about Africa?
They most certainly are. How could they be objective about African Negroes while they are prejudiced against American Negroes?
I disagree with you completely. I think that Americans are prejudiced for African natives and are very prejudiced against white people in Africa.
Well, I'm getting confused. How can Americans be for and against Africans at the same time?
Well, if I say anything, I'm going to confuse you still more. As an Ethiopian, I'm prejudiced against both white people and Negroes.
Discussion are 4 high school students from 4 different countries in Africa. Let me introduce them to you now. Here is Amelia Day from the Gold Coast. Amelia is 18 years old. Here is Susan Rennie from the Union of South Africa. Susan is 17. Susan, those school uniforms, are they always that short?
No, this is actually a dispensation. I'm a senior, but the other girls have to have them 3 inches above the knee.
Very interesting study in native costumes. Thank you. Now let me introduce the boys, will you? Here our baby for tonight, 15-year-old Meskin Venega from Ethiopia, and 16-year-old Boniface Opakaja from Nigeria. Now, let's start out by asking you what some of your own prejudices are. How about you, Amelia? Have you got any prejudices, say, against the Nigerians?
Yeah, I have my own personal prejudice against the Nigerians. Coming from the Gold Coast, where there are many Nigerians, I think that I sometimes look down on the Nigerians as somewhat inferior to us. Because, you see, the Nigerians who come to the Gold Coast are mostly beggars. So that's my opinion about the Nigerians.
It's funny. I don't see how you have a case against for this your proposition, or I say for this your stand. Actually, personally, I look towards the Gold Coast not as inferiors, but perhaps as people that are individualistic, are not working towards the communal effort or towards the welfare of the nation. They, of course, have made great strides because they are a very small country, and yet you have all these differences in their country.
Nesbin, how about your prejudices? You admitted to several at the beginning.
Well, as I told you before, we have also our own prejudices against the African Negroes. We consider them as inferiors. We have, of course, our own reasons for saying so.
Well, what are they, Nesbin?
Well, first thing, we consider ourselves to be of the lost tribe of Israel and not Negroes. It's only that our faces are burned that we look like Negroes. And also, we've been ruling part of Africa for hundreds of years. During the 16th century, and we ruled part of Egypt, Sudan, and as far down as Mozambique.
Well, what about your prejudices against white men?
Well, back home, if a woman marries a white man, she is considered mean, and when she dies, the priests never pray for her as they would do for any ordinary man. It's just considered as suicide.
Why do you think they look down on the white people so much?
Well, for the first reason, religiously they consider them unclean in heart because they eat pork, and that's prohibited in religion.
Susan, you got any prejudices?
Oh, I think I've got some pretty large prejudices. I think I'm very prejudiced against the foreign press, particularly American press, because I've come up against a lot of discrimination myself while I've been here. As a South African, everywhere I go, particularly in the schools, at the moment I mention that I'm from South Africa, I'm discriminated against in the sense that, the picture in South Africa, the situation has been so badly distorted and so exaggerated because racial news is sensational news. And so journalists have so distorted the picture in South Africa that when I come over here, I'm looked down upon. And I've really felt this discrimination. I haven't been treated as just an individual and a human being. And I feel that the press is responsible for this.
Well, I've been wanting to ask you a question for a long time. When we all came here, you just took to me. You like me very much, I can see, and I like you. But I know you are a South African, and I'm an African. But why is it that out here you are very friendly towards me, but down in South Africa you don't do the same towards the Negroes that are living there. Can you tell me?
Well, it's the whole setup. I mean, South Africa, we have a pattern of life which is different to any other country in the world. Because you have the white population, and which came to the country in 1652, and they are much more highly developed, coming from Europe with European backgrounds and traditions. And they have developed the country and have developed a highly civilized community. Whereas the Negroes, the Bantu as we call them in Africa, in South Africa, is primitive, on a very primitive level. And the barrier in South Africa isn't so much color as civilization and economically.
Excuse me, on that point, we get into a very, very tense ground recently. You talked about this question of it not being a racial struggle, but a struggle of civilization. Well, personally, you see, I sympathize with your situation, because I couldn't live in a country, your economic position, and perhaps your future well-being as a nation might be in danger if you allow the strong-hearted, driving Africans to take over the government. That is, of course, what will happen if they're given the vote. Nonetheless, let us come now to that basic issue of racial segregation. I hear this honorable gentleman from Ethiopia. I think it's high time Ethiopians come to the side where exactly they are. I usually wonder, are you Negroes? You are not Negroes. You say you are not Negroes. Are you white? You're not white. What are you?
Well, I told you the answer. We are not Negroes. We are one of the lost tribes of Israel. It's just because our faces are burned that we look like
I've got the point, you are lost. I think that makes a conclusive answer.
I'm wondering if Susan and Mesfin have something very much in common. Neither one of you admit you're Africans, and yet both of you live in Africa and have for generations and generations.
We always talk about being honest, true and fair. No matter who we're dealing with, whether that's our clients or our staff, there's going to be stuff that happens.
Well, I won't say that we naturally, because we're a different ethnical group, we're not Africans in the sense that the Negroes and other groups have actually originated in Africa. But I consider South Africa my homeland and my fatherland, and I always will. And there is a misconception that exists. Most people think that the white settlers came to South Africa and took the land from people who oh no, it is not, and I'll prove it to you, who came to South Africa and took it away as the whites came here to America and took it away from the indigenous occupants. In 1652, when the first white settlers arrived at the Cape, the Bantu, as they are now known, the Negroes in South Africa, were still coming down from equatorial Africa, migrating. And it's a fact that they had not yet entered what is now known as South Africa, the borders of South Africa. The only indigenous occupants in Africa, South Africa at that time, were the Bushmen. And they were exterminated by the Bantu coming down.
Excuse me, Susan, on that point, I think you've read your history upside down.
How come?
Yes, you see, the exact thing that happened was that these Dutch men, I think they were Dutch men, they haven't got a place in their homeland.
Oh, no,
Not a means of living.
I can just
Let
prove,
me finish.
all right, then I can prove you how wrong your historical facts are.
Oh, no, you know, your history is South African history. Mine is a bipartisan history. Well, this man came without any means of livelihood in their own country, with the economic background without any meaning at all. They came to South Africa. And the real fact is that as they came and there was an influx of these Dutch people from their unwanted homes, as there was an influx, the Bantus they were pushing the Bantus up into the country, till came the Zulu War, in which the Zulus were finally defeated in the most bitter and agonizing struggle they had against this African. Yes.
I don't know where you get your historical facts from. I really
I
don't.
get my historical fact from, I think, is it Mr. Trevelyan is on British history.
Oh,
That's far
Mr.
better
George
than...
Trevelyan knows nothing then, and I'll say that. Because it so happens that these penniless whites, as you call them, didn't come out because they didn't have homes or because of any kind of persecution. They were sent out as officials of the Dutch East India Company to establish a refreshment station for ships passing around passing around the bottom of the Cape. Just as the Dutch settlers were sent out to America by the Dutch West India Company to settle and to make a refreshment station here. Now, I think if you had to turn around to those Dutch settlers who came out and said that they came out because they were penniless, they'd be just as indignant as I am. And as you say that the white settlers came and pushed the Bantu back,
Yes.
it's a fact that the whites
It's a fact. I got the point now. It's a fact.
into the interior of Africa and didn't come into contact never even saw a Bantu until 1795, which was practically 100 years, more than 100 years after they had arrived in South Africa.
How did you have the Zulu War? What brought it about?
The Zulus had already, by the time, I think you must have a look at a map. Zululand is very far from the Cape, where these people arrived. And in 100 years, within 100 years, after the arrival of the white settlers, the Zulus had by that time, the Zulus are a part of the Bantu group, had already come down to Natal. And then you've got the two groups, the one coming from the north, the one coming from the south, and they met. And that's where you get the Zulu War.
It was not even a clash in the sense you are taking it. It was even the British.
It was a clash.
The British in their benevolence, or in fact in their, because they've seen the facts that this thing is not good, they even were exercising a tempering force upon the people.
Boniface, just to make things more complicated for you and Susan, I've heard a third interpretation of this, which might settle it. That was the fact that the Bantu were a migratory people. And that it may be true that at some point when the whites came in, there weren't any Bantus there because they were migrating somewhere else. But look, this is all past history now. I'd like to hear something from Mesfin and Amelia on their interpretation of South African history, but almost rather. Let's bring it up to the present, can't we?
Yes.
Yes, we bring it up.
Well, come back just a minute, Sue, to your violent prejudices against the press because they're misrepresenting what goes on in South Africa. You want to clarify that a bit?
Yes, I would.
Will you?
No. Well, I know one outstanding example of misrepresentation. We read in an American, I think it was a magazine, I won't give the name, although I could very easily. This journalist quoted Dr. D.F. Malan, who is an ex-Prime Minister of South Africa, as saying, and I quote, "The Negro does not need a home. He can sleep under a tree." Well, not only is this absolutely fictitious, but he forgot to mention the fact that brick and concrete trees, known to most people as houses, are costing thousands, millions of dollars of the white taxpayers' money annually.
What did you say? I didn't get the point. Said what houses?
Well, you see, this journalist said that Dr.
Yes,
Malan...
I got that point. You say what houses costing the government millions of dollars?
I
What
said
houses?
concrete and brick and cement houses for the Bantu peoples.
But these are the Bantus that are working for you in the factories. How did you get the money? They got the money, they mined the gold, got the gold, and you sold the gold outside. You got the money and you say the money is yours.
Of course it is.
That's a contradiction,
Look,
please.
we came along. We bought the machinery. We developed the mines.
From where did you get the machinery from the mines in Johannesburg? Do you own the
No,
mines?
we got our
Who owns the
machinery.
mines?
We got our machinery from Great Britain.
Who
From
owns-
the money that was got for the diamonds and
How did you get the diamonds out of the ground?
No native labor there,
How did you
Boniface.
get the diamonds out of the ground?
They
I
weren't
want that.
dug out of the ground. They were alluvial diamonds. No native labor there, my boy.
What do the relatives do? You know what, Suzanne, one point you must get right down to the crux of the matter is that in this country, the Africans are really the backbone of your economy. And it is one of that cases where you get this question of man's inhumanity to man. And every day you come here to complain about misrepresentation in the American press. In the actual matter of fact, the American press is giving a fairly good view of the whole situation
been
because
to
they have
South
the color
Africa?
problem themselves.
Have you been to South Africa, my boy?
I wouldn't even pay a penny to go there.
Well, then,
That's
how
not
can you
sure.
talk? How can you talk?
Because I have the facts. People come in there, get people no means of living. How can I go there? I want a house, I want a home, I want position in society.
Well, look, they're getting it. They're getting
let's
exactly what they want.
I'd love to hear from Amelia and Mesfin what their picture, if their picture of South Africa is the same as Boniface's
It
is.
should be the same weight.
Well, coming from Africa myself, naturally I would be a little embittered against the whites in South Africa because from what we hear, they are mistreating the Africans there. But personally, I have no preconceived ideas against the whites because, frankly, I haven't been there, and you can't always trust what you hear from people or what you read from the press. So I have no solid facts about South African problems.
Actually, I myself am against the South Africans because I mean the white people in the South Africa. Because in whose house can one come and take away
They haven't
the
taken away any land.
property? Because what they are doing now, the white people are mining and taking the property for themselves, and that's what they shouldn't do. Because the native people who are living there, they should have what is the property of theirs. Well, actually, before I came from Ethiopia, I was reading about this in the press, and they were pretty hot about it. They were against the white people. The same thing could happen to them, of course.
On this oppression business, if you say the Bantu in South Africa are oppressed, how do you account for this fact? That every year, regularly, hundreds of thousands of Bantu and Negroes from other territories adjoining South Africa, such as Portuguese, East Africa, etc., are invading our country illegally in spite of the law.
We've gone.
Are they coming for oppression? They know what goes on in South Africa, and they come back year and year again. Those who have worked in South Africa and have been sent back, come back. Are they coming back to seek oppression?
Your this does not answer what I am driving at. The Africans have the land. They were there
they do
before
not
you.
have the land, and they were
mine
not
the
there
gold.
before us.
All right, wait a minute, Susan. Let me get my point straight before you go. They mine the lands, they get the diamonds, you sell the diamonds outside. And when you get the diamonds, you say they are not to be given their own fair share of the quota. Have you read Cry of the Beloved Country?
Yes, I have. It's a one-sided view.
One-sided view, and it was written by an European. How could the Europeans be having one-sided view about their own
They're
king and
radicals in
queen?
every nation.
Radicals? You are radicals in South Africa, then?
Oh, no, we're not.
Look, Mesfin was just talking about, and all of you, about the importance of news about South Africa in the Gold Coast, in Nigeria, and in Ethiopia. I'm wondering whether news about racial problems in the United States also takes up a good deal of space in your countries. Does it in the Gold Coast?
Yes, very, because after all, the Negroes come from the Gold Coast, and we feel very badly about what the Americans are doing to our Negroes. I know that one of my ancestors probably came here too, and from what I hear in the Gold Coast, the Americans don't give the Negroes a fair chance of activities here. For instance, they don't give the Negroes the same education as they give the white Americans. And also, for instance, a Negro wouldn't be permitted to go to ride on the same bus with a white man. As for me, I don't think that color, which is purely a natural thing, can be such a great bar to human understanding. And I think America is a democratic nation, as it calls itself. But this one thing really doesn't show it all very well as a democratic country.
Amelia, you've been in the New York area for about a month now. Does the picture you had of America that you've just described correspond to what you've seen here in the schools and the communities you've been in?